Hi, this is Sharif, Open Maths Quota Assurance Fellow. Today we are going to look into debugging skills, and one debugging tip we're going to look into adding a breakpoint, understanding the flow of step into, step return, and step over. So I've already added my breakpoint, and you see it have already hit. So adding a breakpoint simply means you're telling the execution to pause there, and you're running this test in debug mode. This is a Selenium test, but this kind of debugging skills is the same idea when you're trying to debug the real normal Java. I've added a breakpoint, and I'm going to, as you can see, it is on line 65. You can easily tell by clicking on where it have paused. So I'm going to talk about step return, which is F7, step over, and step into, and then terminate, and then resume. I'm going to first talk about step over, which is F6. So step over is when you try to look through line per line, you're using step over. So we need to use step over when you're trying to understand line per line. So I'm going to execute step over, and what I expect the execution to happen is that it is going to run line 65 and then pause for me on line 66. I will pause, I will execute this step over, then I wait for what? I wait for the execution to take place. So as the instance is running, you always are supposed to check on your instance and see what normally happens to be confident enough. And then we have seen that it has paused on line 66, and this is what we expected. So ideally, step over will only execute line per line of either the code you're running or uh, any line of code. But for the step over, it only executes line per line. As you can see, I'm going to step over again, step over again, step over again. As you can see, this is the ideal of the use case of stepping over. Stepping over also have a similarity between, it have a similarity with using print line statements. So it's the same idea when you're trying to use print line statements when you're debugging the real normal Java. I'm going to pause a bit, then we'll look into step return and step into. Until a breakpoint is being hit, then you can start with using these buttons which are being provided by the Eclipse IDE. Okay, so looking into the step into, so ideally step into will only look through each method reference. When I talk about method reference, I'm talking about this is a method reference. So on line 65, we have two method references. One is go to login page, and the second one is go to login as a nurse. A method reference simply means that it have other methods that it comprises of. So this one, go to login page, has other methods that is comprised of. So it's like a package of other methods. It's the same idea on go to login as a nurse. So when you try to inspect this go to login page, by putting a cursor on top of it, you can see it comes from test base class, and then go to login, it comes from login page. So I'm going to step into, then we see what happens. What we need to expect is that it is going to loop through each method reference. First, it is going to loop through go to login page. Second, and then if you come out of this method reference again, it comes to login as nurse. Let me step into, then we see what happens. So when I step into it, have the executions have point me to got login page, which is this is the method reference that we are calling from the login test, and it comprises of other methods that I talked about. And then, so what you're going to do, we're going to step over and then until we come out of this method, then we see, we go back and see what exactly happens when you step out of this method. So I'm going to step over until I come out of this method. So when I step over again, then I came out of got login page method reference, then I have another method reference that is being concatenated. So that means step into will only run each method reference that is being concatenated or that is being added on that specific line that a breakpoint is being hit, or that line that you have paused or you want to understand what these methods are doing. So I'm going to step into again into go to, I'm going to step into login as NAS. So this, when I stepped into it, directed me to login as NAS, which we expected, and it comprises of a return type as a page and login as NAS and password. So ideally, we've seen I can step over, then we come out of this method. So we are back. We need to be back on the same line, line 65. So when I step over again, since because the lines, the method references are over on this line 65, now the step over will act as if it is step. The step into will act as if it is a step over. So when I execute, so when I hit a line step into, it's as if I'm stepping into, over, rather I'm using step into. So it's like when you come out of, when you finish all the method references and you are in a step into, as if you're using, as if you're using step over when you're using step into. I'm not sure whether things are very clear. But ideally, stepping into within this method, we step into twice, and then coming back to initiate page, we step into and such that it comes back on page line 65. Then stepping into now becomes like step over. So when you step into again, when we step into, it now is taking me to this method. It's a void, so it returns nothing. And there is this, it comprises of these methods. I can step into, step over, sorry, and then come out of this method again. It brings me back on this line, line 65. So I'm going to pause. I'm going to pause. Yes, I'm still in, so I can step over again. And then it is coming on line 67. Simply because it have executed this line and then it is pausing on line 67. So we are trying to understand what that this method does, and by understanding that, we need to use these privileges that have been provided by Eclipse, these buttons. So I'm going to pause it a bit and then I run again. We look into step return. Waiting for a breakpoint to be hit. Okay. So by doing this, you can also always check what happens on your instance. So as you can see, it is pausing on the same line, which is returning the home page, and that's where we are. So it is pausing there on line 65 again. So let's look into step return. What does step return does? So step return has a difference, has a similarity, sorry, between the step into, so they have that kind of similarity. Why? Because when I step into, I need first to go to a method reference and then I step return. When I step return in the same method, it is going through a reflexive callable exception. So you need to first step into, go to somewhere, use a method reference, and then step return again. Okay, let me step over, sorry. Then I first go to a method reference where I have been paused and then can come back. So like we had said earlier, that step into, we look through each method reference and then we are pausing on 235. So if I step return, I need to go back to the exact line that I'm coming from. After hitting that, then we are supposed to come back from where we are coming from. So that's the idea of step return buttons. Other buttons like just terminate the entire system or the executions, and then resume will resume the workflow or the system. Suppose you have two breakpoints and you're pausing. Suppose I have another breakpoint here on line 69. So if I resume, the execution is going to run line 69 if I press resume. Thank you, and this has been a very short video of about 10 minutes, but have a nice time.